Honorable Desmond McKenzie, Minister of Local Government and Rural Development, Honorable Robert Nestor Morgan, Minister of State in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, Special Representative of the Secretary General for Disaster Risk Reduction in the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, Miss Mami, Miss Sutori. Well, I want to say a special good afternoon as well to my UNICEF representative to Jamaica, Miss Mariko Kagoshima, Youth Ambassador for the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, Miss Kayla Gaynor, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, Mrs. Marsha Henry Martin, representatives of other ministries, departments, and agencies of government, youth participants, woo! Let's hear it, youth! Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Empress Golding. I'm coming to you live from Jamaica, and I am happy to be your moderator for this afternoon. Today is a good day. Before we get started, I know some of you are tuning in different languages, all right, from different countries, English, Spanish, French, and Portuguese. So I want to make sure I do some house cleaning or housekeeping. So first of all, I'm going to tell you how you can hear the session and participate in your language. All right, so to use the translations and captions in Hopin, where many of you are tuning in, you're going to click on the translations icon. Click mute all to mute the stage audio. Select the language you want to hear. Make sure audio volume is on. And to turn off, click disconnect. The captions, click on the captions icon, captions, click show captions, and select your language. Let's listen once now. Actually, before we go to the Panos Caribbean Voices for Climate Change, let me tell you why we are here. And if you have any problems, just write a comment. If you have any questions, especially for my young people tuning in here in Jamaica, just raise your hand and later on we will ask you to come forward and ask those questions to get the answers that you need. Are you with me? Again, I may be able to say a little something in Spanish. Hola, ¿cómo está? ¿Ça va? ¿Ça va très bien? Portuguese, somebody help me. Hello in Portuguese, somebody help me. Eh? Oi! Yes, 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 yes. All righty. The government of Jamaica is proud to be hosting the Youth Forum for Disaster Risk Reduction in the Americas and the Caribbean. The Youth Forum is the lead into the 7th Regional Platform for Disaster Risk Reduction in the Americas and the Caribbean under the theme, Building Resilient Economies in the Americas and the Caribbean. The Youth Forum is a collaboration with the Jamaica Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, UNICEF, the UN Office of Disaster Risk Reduction, UNDRR, the International Federation of the Red Cross and the Red Crescent, IFRC, the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, CDEMA, and the Global Network of Civil Society Organizations for Disaster Reduction, GNDR. Can we all just breathe after all those acronyms? We got it. Ladies and gentlemen, youth, this forum is aimed at providing you, yes, you, the young people, with a voice, your unique views on disaster risk reduction. That's why we're here, to hear from you. This forum will serve as the lead into the 7th Regional Platform and will provide the opportunity for you, yes, you, the youth, to share your priorities, concerns, and proposals related to disaster risk reduction with all the decision makers at the regional platform. Today, you have the opportunity to have the discussion. Isn't that good? Yes. And the opportunity to provide input into the thematic areas on the agenda and provide ideas for following up action to the 7th Regional Platform. The Youth Forum will bring together participants ages 15 to 24 from within the Caribbean, North, Central, and South America. Ladies and gentlemen, my young people, my young people, my young people. This youth forum is taking place at a time when the region is responding to multiple hazard impacts, even as we grapple with the response and recovery of the COVID-19 pandemic. Therefore, today, we ask you, yes, you, the youth, to take full advantage of the opportunity to learn from the experiences of the youth in the Caribbean and the Americas who are advocating for youth involvement in disaster risk reduction. It is hoped that at the end of this forum, strategies will be implemented and acted upon that will ensure that the voices of the youth across the region will be shared at the regional platform scheduled for November the 4th, or November 1 to the 4th, 2021, virtually. We look forward to today's dialogue, discussion, and exchange. Are you looking forward to it? Yeah, we got to get excited about this, right? All right, improving our communities, one youth voice and idea at a time. Let's listen to Panos Caribbean Voices for Climate Change, who have made a strong statement about climate change.
Warning, 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 warning to the world. Warning, warning, warning. Climate change is happening. We got to do something, no doubt. To the world, we're calling out. Hey. See the signs, they all reveal that global climate change is real. It's not a matter of when or how. Climate change is happening now. Sea levels are rising globally. We're losing our beaches constantly. Ooh, summers are hotter than they used to be. Stronger hurricanes more frequently. You see? Severe flooding, longer droughts. That's what climate change is all about. You know that? We have to do what we have to do. We've got to prepare. Start by being aware. Yo, a long time we are upset the ecology. No, climate change is a reality. No strange weather changes all year round. We can't stop it, but we can slow it down. Small islands will feel it the most, especially the people them with the on the coast. We're losing the reefs and the beaches, flooded in the coastal communities. See the signs, they all reveal. So that global climate change is real. Now warn you. It's not a matter of when or how. Climate change is happening now. Watch this. They're burning the garbage everywhere. They're cutting down the trees. I know, my love. To adapt to the ever-changing climate, some lifestyle changes we got to make. Emission of gases we have to reduce. Turn off the lights when they're not in use. So much of the warming changes we see are caused by human activity.
Chemicals poisoning the air,
Poisoning the air.
greenhouse gases in the atmosphere.
Oh, yeah.
This is a warning.
Warning, 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 warning.
Climate change is happening.
For real.
We've got to do something.
Tell you.
Act now.
It's not
And that is a warning there from the Panos Caribbean Voices for Climate Change, all right? Thank you so much. Special hello again to Costa Rica, Mexico, Brazil, Guatemala, and Panama in the building. Good to see you. It's a good day. All of these voices from the Caribbean, boy, I tell you, change is going to come. Everybody say, a change going to come. Yes, it will. And I love young people. So I'm honored now to invite to speak the ambassador, Kyla Gaynor. Kyla Gaynor is the youth ambassador for the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management. Miss Kyla Gaynor, let's hear your voice on this DRR session.
Honorable Minister of State in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, the Honorable Robert Nestor Morgan, Special Representative of the Secretary General for Disaster Risk Reduction in the United Nations, Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, Mami Mitsutori, UNICEF Representative to Jamaica, Mariko Kagoshima, sorry. We acknowledge all media partners, youth participants joining us today, as well as viewers on all social media platforms. Welcome. As a proud member of our regional community of the Americas and the Caribbean, and a proud Jamaican, I use my voice today in unison with my peers as an expression of how our lives and families have been severely impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. This disease is very real, and if we are to successfully pivot through each uncertain moment, the adherence to Disaster Risk Management Act plans and protocols in each region with increased public cooperation can significantly improve our way of life and the new norms. I, along with many other youths, have opted to take the vaccine as a way of playing our parts and helping to save lives. Utilizing my local disaster risk management platform, I have disseminated relevant content to assist with positive change. In addition, my fellow youth and I have formed a group called the Global Environment and Restoration Stars, GEARS. Our aim is to carry out beach cleanups and research. Although we have experienced major delays because of movement restrictions, still we press forward planning and the process of resource acquisition. It is relatable, the plethora of issues challenging the youth during this pandemic, even more than before. One most prevalent is that of mental health, which has caused a functional imbalance in our school, social, and family life. This, coupled with the appalling acts of physical abuse, has plagued the peace and serenity of my peers and makes me feel helpless, to say the least. I am angered, but hold steadfast to the hope that things will get better. There is a positive side to this global pandemic, and one aspect is that of new job opportunities of youth in several career fields, as well as online and work from home opportunities. Additionally, there has been an increase in scholarships and outreach programs. Youth of the Americas and the Caribbean, we have all experienced some level of change due to COVID-19. Therefore, let us help each other through words of encouragement, checking up on our friends, and being there for them in their time of need. Do the best you can with what you have, wherever you are. We applaud platforms such as this, which provide healthy, robust, and results-oriented communication. My name is Kyla Gaynor, 2021 Youth Ambassador for the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM, Jamaica. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kyla. Everybody say it with me now. Do the best you can with what you have. You heard the words of Kyla right there. The next presenter is Special Representative of the Secretary General for Disaster Risk Reduction, UNDRR, Mami Mitsutori. Give us a moment. We're getting her on. No? And also, I want to remind you, oh, there she is. She's ready. I want to remind you quickly
Dear
before
youth participants
Okay,
of the America and Caribbean region, I hope you can all hear me. I am green with envy that you are all there in Jamaica together. I have to say good evening from Geneva, but thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you all today at this very important event, the Youth Forum, because yes, climate change is happening now and we need to do something. We aim to engage young people across the region in the work of disaster risk reduction right before the regional platform for the Americas and the Caribbean, hosted for the first time by a Caribbean nation, Jamaica, and the COP26 in Glasgow. Over the last 20 years, climate related disasters have almost doubled by comparison with the previous 20 years. We are all being radicalized by this reality, but none more so than the youth, who will live with the consequences of global warming for a large part of your lives if we cannot make a serious course correction. The voice of the world's youth has been a powerful voice in driving many countries to develop plans to achieve net zero CO2 emissions by 2050 so that we can keep global temperature rise at 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. World leaders need to listen to you and will be held to account by you, youth, if plans to increase fossil fuel use remain at levels which make it impossible to meet that target, and if insufficient resources are made available to enable developing countries to adapt to the inevitable consequences of climate change. The Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction recognizes that many ways of global warming interact with other drivers of disaster risk. Drivers such as poverty, the COVID-19 pandemic that the youth ambassador just talked about, rising sea levels, the destruction of the Amazon and other ecosystems, unplanned urbanization, lack of building codes, weak risk governance, the list is very long. And we need to know that disasters are not actually natural. Hazards may have a natural origin, but disasters are the consequences of our own choices, many of which make us more exposed and vulnerable. Climate change, vulnerability, and inequality interact in a vicious cycle. The COVID-19 pandemic, a global disaster, has affected the Americas and the Caribbean like no other region. And when good governance is absent, we can see actions that defy common sense, such as large subsidies for the fossil fuel industry and a failure to respond to early warnings about the pandemic threat. Good governance, accountability, and progress require the engagement of civil society and especially you, the youth. An estimated 106 million young people are a powerful constituency for change in the Americas and the Caribbean. Youth clearly play a part in spreading awareness, high awareness on disaster risk reduction in your classrooms, in your streets, in your homes, and in urging governments to act. We believe in your catalyzing power to transform our societies, your societies, current and future generations. We need to work together to create a more resilient world. My call to action today is to ensure that youth representatives are joined at the table when national and local disaster risk reduction strategies are being developed, revised, and implemented. Ensuring youth participation is a key driver behind the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction's Youth Engagement Action Plan, which is being implemented in coordination with the UN Secretary General's Envoy on Youth, UNICEF, and UN Interagency Network on Youth Development. I invite you to participate in UNDRR initiatives such as the Regional Scientific and Technological Group for Disaster Risk Reduction. I invite you to affiliate your universities, your schools, and young scientists to support research to improve disaster risk reduction. And I invite you to get involved in the Caribbean Safe School Initiative to make schools more resilient to disasters. Nothing about us without us. Nothing about us without the youth. This is a mantra that UNDRR takes to heart. We value youth as the most critical agent of change. Thank you for your attention and for your power.
Thank you so much, Mami Mizutori. Yes, we value you, young people. You know what my favorite P word is? What is it? She said it. Pa- Participate. Yes, participate. We have to. Critical agents of change. We must participate. I want to thank her again and also acknowledge UNESCO for being an organizer. So many UN agencies are making this happen. But you see, when teams get together, teamwork makes the dream work. And we young people, I'm putting myself in that category, by the way, we young people have to work together. As a collective, a change can happen. It has been done before in history, and it can be done now. But it is up to you, the young people. So I want to acknowledge UNESCO and say a special hello to my friends in the Dominican Republic who are tuning in. I'll be there next week for 3 weeks. So I can't wait to be with you. I want to thank each and every one of you again. Some of you are just logging in. Stick and stay with us for the afternoon. It's going to be informative, and we're going to be charged with the right action plan to make a difference in our communities, our society, and improve our climate and our environment. So now the next presenter, I know very well, UNICEF rep to Jamaica, Mariko Kagoshima, will now bring greetings.
Thank you, Empress. Honorable Robert Nesta Morgan, Minister of State in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information. Honorable Minister Desmond Mackenzie, Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development. Masha Henry Martin, PS. I recognized you even if you are wearing mask. Mami Mizutori, Special Representative of the Secretary General for Disaster Risk Reduction in the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. And Kyra Gaynor, Ambassador of OTPEM. Ladies and gentlemen, all youth participants joining us today, good afternoon, still afternoon. It is a pleasure to be with people who are so committed to the participation of adolescents and young people on an issue of such a great importance for our region. The climate crisis continues to have an unprecedented impact on the Latin America and Caribbean region, with millions of people affected each year by floods, droughts, and other extreme events such as hurricanes. The scientific evidence is clear. The frequency, intensity, and duration of extreme weather-related events is increasing, and the slow onset of changes will only intensify if the current path of inaction continues. Children, adolescents, and young people are especially vulnerable for biological, physical, physiological, and cognitive reasons. They are the ones who will experience the impact of disasters disproportionately, putting their well-being at risk in the present and in the future. There are other issues that can further increase their vulnerability, of course, such as inequality, discrimination, or poverty. The Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction 2015 to 2030 calls for multi-sectoral, people-centered practices to address the complex and underlying social, environmental, and economic factors of disaster risk. In order to achieve a greater collective impact, UNICEF is working with and for young people in all sectors to achieve a more integrated approach to reducing disaster risk with a special focus on groups with the greatest vulnerabilities, such as children. We adults are called to promote and make real changes that impact the present and the future of children and youth. It is imperative that climate action and disaster risk reduction actors work together to provide special attention to the specific risks faced by children, adolescents, and young people in the different context and reality of the Americas and the Caribbean. It is our duty to involve them as agents of change and active participants in efforts and initiatives to reduce disaster risk and adapt to climate change. Inclusive and equitable quality education is fundamental to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and is essential to guarantee integrated development. To ensure resilience of communities and the education sector, the participation of children, adolescents, and young people and the wider society needs to be ensured to result a safe, resilient, and sustainable culture for families and communities. On the other hand, educational services are often not adequately equipped to cope with local climate conditions and other disasters, and are occasionally interrupted by those events, as we have been seeing with the COVID-19 pandemic crisis. It is therefore critical to make comprehensive school safety a priority and ensure all schools and educational institutions have their schools' disaster management plans. Ensuring meaningful participation of children, adolescents, and young people also implies that their voices are heard and acted upon by decision makers. And this is precisely the goal of this forum, to gather and share youth concerns, demands, and ideas with governments and stakeholders at the upcoming 7th Regional Platform on Disaster Risk Reduction in the Americas and the Caribbean. UNICEF reiterates our support to continue working collectively with young people in disaster risk reduction and climate action, leaving no one behind, so we can help to build and rebuild a more resilient world and thereby help ensure safe and sustainable environment for children today and tomorrow. We wish you a good, fruitful discussion during the forum, and once again, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mariko. Thank you. I heard another acronym coming out of there. I don't know if it's one already. What's your DMP? What is it? What's your disaster management plan? Yeah, we all need one. What's yours? What's yours? What's yours? We all need one, and we're going to find one together today. I'm going to move now for the opening address and invite our Minister of State in the Ministry of Education, Youth, and Information to deliver the opening address, right? The Honorable Robert Nesta Morgan.
I'm coming up. Thank you very much, Empress Golding. You know, Empress is a very big supporter of children and youth issues. I've known you for how long now? About 15 years. So it is quite appropriate that she was asked to moderate this very important conference, or forum, as they call it. I like conference. Conference sounds more big people-ish. So like we reach a UN now, not true? And the reason why I stand is because I realized that I could not see the persons on this side of the audience. And I want to see everyone because I think this is a very important discussion that we're having, the discussion of climate change. So let me do the formalities first. I would like to acknowledge Mrs. Empress Golding. Honorable Desmond McKenzie, I don't think he's here. I think he's in Parliament. I left there. Special Representative of the Secretary General for Disaster Risk Reduction in the United Nations Office of Disaster Risk Reduction, Miss Mami Mizutori. I'm being very careful with these names. UNICEF representative, and here's a good one, Miss Mariko Kagoshima. Did I do well on that one? I've been practicing. Youth Ambassador for the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, Ms. Kayla Gaynor. Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, Ms. Marsha Henry Martin. Good afternoon, ma'am. Also, representatives of other ministries, departments, and agencies of government. Youth participants, most importantly. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I was sitting down and I was listening, and I have a speech, and I'm going to read some of it. But I was looking on, and I was listening to the presentations, and I recognized that we have three disasters that we're contending with, and I call them the three C's: crime, climate, and COVID. Shocking, not true? They all start with C. We need to ban C out of the alphabet. And even though when you speak about disaster risk management, the initial idea is how many drains are going to fix, how many trees are going to plant. But in a diverse definition of what disasters are, it's not just about climate change, even though climate change is probably one of the most important challenges that we face currently. But we have COVID, and we have crime. An important thing is that they're all interconnected. They're all interconnected. How you manage crime can influence how you deal with climate change, because crime is a symptom of disorder, corruption, lack of transparency, and all of these things. And people, if you view them in silos, rather than from a global developmental approach, you may find that you make progress in one area which is defeated by lack of progress in another area. So I just wanted to make that point. I want to thank you for inviting me to the inaugural Youth Forum on Disaster Reduction in the Americas and the Caribbean. I would want to also express my appreciation to the conveners of this program, my colleagues at the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, the United Nations Children Fund, UNICEF, the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent, the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, CDEMA, the Global Network of Civil Society Organizations for Disaster Reduction, and the Honorable Desmond McKenzie, who actually sent me the invitation in particular. I would also especially want to commend you all for organizing this important forum, I was about to say conference, including our youth in charting the way forward. They bring a unique voice to the table and represent the subset of the population that stands to be most impacted by the increased risk and adverse and diverse effects of disasters. To our youth, thank you for being here from various countries, not just Jamaica, Latin America, and the Caribbean. And I want to appreciate you for expressing an interest and commitment and energy to looking at this very important issue of disaster risk management. And today is a true example of what our youth can achieve as once provided with the requisite support and guidance and space at the table. They will enact the agency required to have the positive outcomes needed to drive our countries towards sustainable development. I think this forum is important in the context of where countries in Latin America and the Caribbean are. If if you look at the report by the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency in 2014, it noted that the second most disaster-prone region in the world is Latin America and the Caribbean. We continue to be hit hard by natural disasters such as droughts, floods, hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanoes. You remember the volcanoes, right? Many Jamaicans don't have any concept of what it's like for have a volcano next door to you, but we have Caribbean neighbors who have suffered serious damage from volcanoes. The reality is that commonplace in the Caribbean disasters are, and it's something that we must accept as it's a characteristic of our geology and our geography, which is why it's important and paramount for us as a region to strengthen our economic resilience and increase sustainability of livelihoods. And I'm confident that today we will move a step further in that regard. I wish to also share some thoughts with you on the critical aspect of economic security for our region. First, the ability for small island developing states to reduce risks associated with the adverse effects of disasters, and not just in the sense of crime and violence, but in how we safeguard our population against the ravages of natural and man-made disasters. I want to also mention to you that the adoption of the Sendai framework in 2015, which focused on the institution of measures to address the four main dimensions of disaster risk reduction, which are understanding risk, strengthening disaster risk, governance to manage disaster risk, investing in disaster reduction for resilience, and enhancing disaster preparedness for effective response, was a significant step in the global thrust to build back better in recovery, rehabilitation, and reconstruction, and to secure economy and environment for sustainable development. This framework has allowed us to modify and identify the impact of disasters on countries globally, and has shown that in the last decade, the number of deaths and missing persons attributed to disasters has increased by more than 100%. And importantly, between 2019 and 20 alone, there was an increase of 2,000%. Additionally, the direct economic loss attributed to disasters in relation to global gross domestic product over the last decade has increased by more than 1,000%. And in the year 2019-20, by more than 20,500%. Remember I told you about the three C's: COVID, crime. So the one that is really prominent now that is killing off millions of people is COVID. And you see it reflected in the data. These statistics, while not specific to Latin America and the Caribbean, provide evidence that the focus on disaster reduction must be central to any initiative being undertaken for development. And we have seen firsthand, within the span of 1 year within the region, countries like St. Vincent and the Grenadines who experienced the eruption of the La Soufrière volcano, which displaced 20,000 people. They lost their homes, their livelihood, and it had a significant negative impact on the country's economy. One of their closest neighbors, or our closest neighbors, one of our closest neighbors to be fair, Haiti, had to contend with the onslaught of earthquakes, tropical storms, and hurricanes during the same period, which further compromised an already fragile economy, with the Human Development Index ranking them 170 out of 189 countries in 2020. The poorest country in Latin America and the Caribbean region, and amongst the poorest in the world. Despite marginal gains in poverty reduction, these disasters have undone any gains achieved economically, with current estimates pointing to a poverty rate of 60% in 2020, compared to a national estimate of 58% in 2012. And you can come locally and think about it. What has happened since 2018 in Jamaica with the onslaught of COVID? And remember also last year at this time, the entire country was flooded. And you can look at the the twinning of the climate and COVID and the negative impact that it has had on our economy, where tourism closed down because of COVID, and we lost 80% of that foreign exchange. And where did the money come from to do the recovery of the floods that took place last year? And then you can see how climate change and COVID are interacting in a conversation of destruction of economies. So while we note the vulnerabilities of small island development states as a whole, children and youth as a subset, and this is where I'm most passionate, as a subset have faced the greatest challenges and are more at risk for suffering because of the impacts of disasters when they occur. And many of you here, some of you are college students, some of you have just finished, some of you are high school students, would recognize that children are disproportionately affected from negative impacts in their physical, mental, nutritional needs, access to education, economic opportunities, disruption in their home and family lives, along with exposure to violence as well as many other limiting side effects. These are exacerbated by the prolonged recovery process of countries to be able to recuperate and rebuild, which leaves our youth and children without the requisite social protection mechanism that may have been otherwise offered by these states, ensuring that their youth population are able to develop and reach their full potential. Let me give you an example. So the disconnection of children from the formal education system is not just a disconnection from education, it's a disconnection from their society. And I sit at the side of the ministry that deals with children. So take, for example, there are some children who only get a proper meal when they go to school. That's why we have PATH that gives them 5 meals every week. There are some students who the only safe place they have is in the guidance counselor's office. The number of reported cases of child abuse have dropped since COVID. But we know anecdotally that the number of cases of child abuse has not fallen. Because who are they going to now report it to? They can't go to the guidance counselor. There's no teacher that is going to see change in behavior to say something is wrong. So not only does the economic disruption of climate change, lack of water, floods have an impact on youth, but every time something happens that devastates the society, chances are youth are going to be the most impacted, because youth tend to be the ones with the lowest voice in the room. So when they were all screaming about opening the health sector, the entertainment sector, I heard no one screaming to open back schools. You remember? We want to party, but do we want education? That's another discussion for another forum. In recognition of these challenges and the importance of developing a sustainable means by which to mitigate against them, Jamaica has embarked over the last 7 years on a number of initiatives in response to the adoption of the Sendai framework geared towards both legislation and capacity building. The Disaster Risk Management Act of 2015, which sought to make new provisions for the management and mitigation of disasters and the reduction of the risk of disaster, was widely promoted. And I think your ministry had a key role in that. Similarly, the Building Act, you again, in 2018 provided a modern legislative framework aimed at reducing the vulnerability of Jamaica's built environment and ensuring public safety has also been improved. We have had widespread training in disaster risk management through places like our agency that does, I had a brain freeze a while ago. What's the name of it called? ODPEM. Correct, my apologies. And we've also had damage assessments, post-disaster needs assessment, and emergency planning, which have improved over the years. In support of these efforts, we note that the Planning Institute created an environment and risk management framework to influence the normalization of resilience into the framework for policies and programs. The announcement of the National Spatial Plan by the Government of Jamaica, to which island-wide consultations assisted in the drafting of the document. This is expected to address climate change and disaster risk considerations for the improvement of sustainable development and the use of the country's natural resources. Additionally, in line with the Sendai framework, particularly as it relates to Target E, Indicator 1, Jamaica has made advances through the development of critical working documents such as the final draft of the National Framework for Disaster Risk Management, the National Disaster Response Coordination Plan, Jamaica's Comprehensive Disaster Risk Management Policy, and the multi-year DDR plan for 2020 to 2030. Jamaica has also developed its parish disaster plans for all 14 parishes in line with indicator number 2 of the framework. The parish disaster plans were prepared under the ambit of the Disaster Risk Management Act of 2014. I want to suggest, before I close, that it is incumbent on us, however, to broaden the scope through which we view disaster risk reduction to include other non-climatic hazards, such as I mentioned, COVID and crime. In this global economy where another region's problems soon become ours, COVID in China becomes COVID in Jamaica, and poses even more adverse effects, we are susceptible as a region to various hazards that are either equally or even more capable of constituting disaster. The ongoing pandemic is reminiscent of this. To date, there have been 1.5 million deaths across the world since we recorded our first case in Latin America and the Caribbean. This is in comparison to an average of 7,500 fatalities per year in Latin America and the Caribbean as a result of traditionally seen natural disasters. Similarly, while the resultant economic disruption from the ongoing pandemic is yet to be measured in finality, it so far continues to accelerate rapidly across a myriad of sectors in both developed and developing countries on a macro and a micro level. The social impacts are worsening and are expected to continue that way even through economic recovery. The ongoing pandemic has impacted every aspect of people's lives. Several dimensions of their well-being, such as health, income, wealth, job quality, are being met with a direct negative impact. Other indirectly, my apologies. So, and I move from this speech to close because I do not want to be here too long because I think I've exceeded my time. Just to encapsulate what I've been saying. Last year we found out that over 130,000 students were not connecting to the education system. That's of a population of 600,000, so that's almost 30%. But that doesn't really speak to the facts of the situation. There are schools in Jamaica that 60% of the school population have not connected. So on average, it's 130,000, but when you go into schools, some of them are having a 50% disconnection. Now, contemplate the economic, psychosocial, developmental impact that is going to have on small island developing states for the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Contemplate the impact it will have on crime when you have more illiterate persons within the society who are unable to find work. And then couple that with our vulnerability as a small island developing states to flooding, sea rise, erosion, people living on the gully banks, rivers coming down. And how is it that a government and governments of small island developing states with a diminished quality labor force will find a revenue to remedially impact the devastating aspects of climate change in our societies? So when I went to Pal Americas a few years ago, countries like Jamaica and Caribbean states constitute almost irrelevant percent of greenhouse gases that cause climate change. But they are impacted by a majority of the negative consequences of climate change. The sea rises 1 feet, Portland Cottage is gone. So which is why it's so important that us here as young people who are the inheritors of the debt of our parents, grandparents, and friends in America, China, and other places, we're going to be the ones paying for it. So it's important that your voice is as loud as possible in educating yourselves and your colleagues that the issue is not just about what we do here in Jamaica. We can plant 1 million trees. The issue is about what the world does, because just like COVID, climate change impacts everybody. So I want to express deep appreciation for the invitation to speak at this forum. And I want to thank you for listening so attentively. I hope at least something out of my presentation was relevant to your life. And I ask as young people that you continue to look at the world we live in and seek to collaborate towards positive action of change. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Minister. And we can't wait to get back to school. Us moms are going crazy with the kids at home. So it's interesting, Minister mentioned the C words, and I say it all the time. Like, I'm allergic to many C words. I'm allergic to COVID, allergic to climate challenges. But also there's another one that came up, and I'm thinking about cancer. I'm so allergic to it. That's another issue. And I'm wondering what conversations COVID, crime, climate, and cancer have, because the impact of disasters on the delivery of health services is something we also have to have a conversation about. So, Minister, thank you for stimulating thought on the things that we need to collaborate, the C word that he brought up, on, and look at the solutions, right? I'm excited. Are you? All right, thanks again, Minister. We will now be moving into the meat of the matter. The first segment is going to be the plenary session. And I want to say hello before we do that to Tunisia just joined us, and Venezuela and Haiti just joined us. So let's give them a round of applause from Jamaica. Yeah, we made it to the motherland. This is big. And the minister said that it's about the action of everybody across the world. So as much as we're saying it's a Caribbean and America's session conference, it is a global conference, technically. All right, so we want to welcome. And if you know somebody in another country, DM them and tell them to log on right now. We still have a couple more hours of this conversation, disaster risk reduction. So this first session is going to be, what will my tomorrow be? That's the focus, which will feature the perspective of youth from the Americas and the Caribbean, moving forward in the face of multiple disasters. And you heard them already when the minister spoke. We'll be hearing now from Jamoy Phillips, Jamaican, discussing COVID-19 from a Jamaican perspective, and Aria Laidlow from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And the minister mentioned, you know, we haven't experienced a volcano here in Jamaica, but they have. So she will speak on the effect of volcanic eruptions in that country. Are you ready? Good. The youth moderators are youth from this very own youth committee, all right, of this event. They are part of the committee, so they will be moderating. They are Sylvia Guzman from the Costa Rican Red Cross and Adrian Reed from the Red Cross Jamaica. So let's start the first session for this afternoon.
No strange weather changes all year round. We can't stop it, but we can slow it down. Small islands will feel it the most, especially